The snort gave it away. I was standing in the hallway of my parents' house, the same hallway with the same carpet runner my mother picked out when I was 9, holding the seating chart. She insisted on revising for the 4th time. The dryer was running in the laundry room, and through the thin door I could hear my sister Sloane, and then that sound, that specific snort. The one from when we were kids, and she found something genuinely helplessly funny, the kind of laugh she saved for moments when she was truly entertained and did not care who heard it. And then I grabbed the back of her dress and just yanked right during the "to the bride" part. My hand found the wall. The Downy Unstoppables scent, the purple kind, the one my mother had used since 2014, seeped from under the laundry room door and mixed with the thrum of the dryer. Sloane kept talking. Mom says if I time it right, everyone will laugh and it'll look like I'm being playful. And then Mom does the wine thing during the entrance. It's going to be so good. She snorted again. My sister was rehearsing a toast into her phone. A toast for my wedding, 7 days away, in front of 200 people who had RSVP'd with gift registry selections and travel plans and babysitter arrangements. I am a pediatric nurse. I work the NICU at Street, Luke's Children's Hospital in Boise, Idaho, and I have held 2-pound babies whose hearts stopped and restarted mine, with compressions counted each one, never losing count. When something goes wrong in a room full of screaming parents, my hands go still and my brain clicks into protocol. Assess, document, act. My phone was already recording through the crack in the laundry room door before I finished processing what I had heard. 11 seconds of audio. Sloane's voice, her snort, and the plan to destroy my wedding dress during her toast. My phone buzzed in my hand. A text from Jake got the vow down to 3 sentences. All I need. I stared at those 7 words for a count of 5. The dryer cycled behind the door. Sloane laughed at something else, something quieter. Then I walked into the kitchen. My mother stood at the island, arranging dahlias for the rehearsal dinner, her acrylic nails clicking against the glass vase. The nails were the color she called champagne blush, repainted every 2 weeks at the same salon where she and Sloane got their hair done together, an appointment I had never been invited to and had stopped expecting to be invited to, sometime around age 16. Her phone lay on the counter, face up. A text from Sloane glowed on the lock screen. Mom, the wine has to be red. White won't show on ivory. I picked up the seating chart. The names were rearranged again. Aunt Deb moved closer to the dance floor. My mother's college roommate bumped to a better table. My friends from Street Luke's pushed to a back corner near the kitchen entrance. Thanks, Mom. Looks great. My mother smiled. Her teeth were white and even professionally maintained the dental office manager's calling card even a decade after retirement. Anything for my girl. I drove home with the seating chart on the passenger seat and 11 seconds of audio on my phone. The speedometer held at exactly 35. I counted the traffic lights, 6 all green. On the 7th, which was red, I stopped and called Paula Collier. The next morning, my mother hosted what she called a family bridal brunch. She set the table with the good china, the plates with the blue rim. She brought out for occasions that deserved photographing and posting to the Marsh family group chat. Present my mother Gail, my father Dennis already in his reading glasses even though there was nothing to read, my sister Sloane in a silk blouse that cost more than my monthly car payment, me in a Target cardigan because I had 12-hour shifts 3 days this week, and my laundry pile was a conversation I was avoiding. Jake was not invited. Just us girls and Dad, my mother said, which was her way of saying, this is Marsh family business, and Jake Collier is not yet a Marsh, and honestly an electrician at our table changes the photographs. Sloane sat in my mother's chair at the head of the table, while my mother orbited with mimosas and fruit plates, the choreography of a woman who controlled every room by pretending to serve it. My father peeled a clementine in one unbroken spiral the way he always did a small act of competence in a life spent deferring. Sloane, tell them about the toast you're writing. My mother set down the mimosa pitcher with a precision that suggested she had practiced the placement. She's been working so hard on it. Sloane pressed her hand to her chest. It's going to be really special. About sisterhood. I sipped my orange juice. No champagne for me. 8 weeks pregnant, and nobody at this table had earned the right to that information yet. I can't wait to hear it. Both my girls at the same party. Best day of my life. My father said it the way he said everything with warmth that did not commit to anything specific. He had said similar words at Sloane's dance recitals at my nursing school graduation, where he arrived 20 minutes late because Sloane's car would not start, and at the engagement dinner where he spent most of the evening asking Jake about wiring codes because it was easier than looking at me. The brunch lasted 90 minutes. My mother told 4 stories about the girls growing up. Sloane was the protagonist of all 4. I appeared twice, once as the girl who held Sloane's dance bag backstage during a competition, and once as the girl who did not cry when she broke her arm at age 8, which my mother presented as a personality trait, rather than a response to being told there was not time for the ER, because Sloane's competition was in an hour. And Whitney never made a fuss, my mother said, beaming at me across the table. That's just who she is. Easy. Sloane nodded. My father peeled another clementine. My mother mentioned she was coordinating something special for the entrance, and winked at Sloane. Sloane's lips pressed together, holding back that smile, the one I had seen 1,000 times when she was keeping a secret that made her feel special. My mother's acrylic nails tapped the champagne glass. 3 taps. I counted them against my pulse. That evening, I sat on the bathroom floor of our apartment. The tile was cold through my scrub pants. Above the sink behind the ibuprofen, I could no longer take the pregnancy test from 3 weeks ago, was still tucked in the cabinet. Through the wall, I could hear Jake in the living room, the scratch of a pen on paper as he worked on his vows. I played the voice memo one more time. Sloane's snort filled the small bathroom and bounced off the tile like a slap. Then I called Paula. I need to tell you something, and I need you to not call the police or yell at anyone. That's a hell of an opening, sweetheart. Go ahead. I held my phone to the speaker and played the audio. 11 seconds. Then silence on the line. 5 seconds. I could hear Paula breathing the steady rhythm of a woman who produced live television and had trained herself to absorb information before reacting. Play it again, Paula said. I played it again. How long has this been going on? The treating you like this. 30 years, give or take. And Jake knows. Jake knows my family is difficult. He doesn't know about the wedding plan. Paula's voice shifted. The warmth remained, but something underneath it hardened the way a riverbed hardens under moving water, stone forming slowly and then all at once into something you could stand on. Okay, here's what we're going to do. You and I are going to give those people the wedding they planned. Every single part of it. We're just going to make one small adjustment to the AV setup. Paula Collier was 52 years old, an executive producer at KTVB Boise's NBC affiliate, and a freelance event coordinator who had staged over 200 weddings, galas, and corporate events across the Treasure Valley. She had a Rolodex, an actual physical alphabetized Rolodex on her desk, updated quarterly, the relic of a woman who trusted paper over apps. She had raised Jake alone after her ex-husband's family spent years trying to erase her from Jake's childhood events, uninviting her from birthday parties, scheduling father-son weekends that accidentally overlapped with her custody time. She saw the pattern in my mother the way I saw an arrhythmia on a heart monitor instantly, without hesitation, with the steady anger of someone who had lived it. The reception venue's AV system runs through a single laptop backstage, Paula said. I know the tech, Miguel. He owes me a favor from the Micron Gala last year. Your sister's toast is going to happen exactly as planned. But at a specific moment, the rehearsal audio plays on the speakers projected alongside the live feed. Your guests will hear the real Sloane and the performance Sloane at the same time. And the wine on the dress. We get you a decoy. I know a thrift store on Overland Road where they always have formals in the back. We find something close to your dress, similar cut $40. You wear the real dress for the ceremony. You switch to the decoy for the reception entrance, which is when the spill is planned. After the spill, you change back to the real dress. Your mother ruins a $40 thrift store find, and everyone sees you walk back in pristine. My hands were steady for the first time in 24 hours. This was NICU protocol, a plan, a sequence, a team with assigned roles. I had run codes in rooms where the oxygen line tangled and the parents were screaming and the baby was turning blue, and every time the steadiness came not from courage, but from having steps to follow. "Paula," I said, "thank you. They're counting on you being polite. That's their whole strategy. We're not going to be impolite, Whitney. We're going to be precise." I heard Jake's footsteps in the hallway. He appeared in the bathroom doorway, leaning against the frame, his face soft, with the concern of a man who had learned not to ask what's wrong, but to ask the useful question instead. "You okay? Yeah? Your mom is going to help with some wedding logistics." He smiled. "She's been waiting her whole life for this." So have I. Monday. 5 days before the wedding. Paula's living room was organized chaos. 3-ring binders of vendor contacts stacked on the coffee table, a laptop open to a venue floor plan, KTVB coffee mugs on every horizontal surface, and a wall of photographs showing Jake at every age from gap-toothed first grader to the man who built me a hallway bench from reclaimed oak because he saw a tutorial online and figured he could do better. Paula poured me decaf without asking. She had not said a word about the pregnancy, but a box of saltine crackers had appeared on her kitchen counter the last time I visited, and a second box materialized on this visit, positioned between the coffee maker and a basket of chamomile. Tea bags. That was Paula. She saw everything and waited until you were ready to say it, and in the meantime she fed you crackers. "Tell me about your mother," she said. I told her about the science fair when I was 12. My project was on how different soil pH levels affected bean plant growth, and I measured every plant every morning for 6 weeks, recorded the data in a composition notebook with a green cover, and won first place in the regional competition. My parents were at Sloane's dance recital across town. I came home carrying the trophy, and my mother said, "That's nice, honey. Can you help me steam Sloane's costume for tomorrow?" The trophy went in my closet. It stayed there for 18 years behind a shoebox of Sloane's old dance medals that my mother stored in my room because Sloane's was already full. Paula listened without interrupting the way producers listen when they are building a story in their heads. When I finished, she set down her coffee mug and was quiet for 10 seconds. Then she said, "When Jake turned 8, his father's family threw him a birthday party. At their house. They didn't invite me. His grandmother told Jake I was busy with work. I found out from a photo on Facebook 3 days later. Jake in a paper crown, blowing out candles surrounded by people who had decided his mother was an inconvenience." She turned the Rolodex card between her fingers. I showed up at their house the next Saturday with a homemade cake and 8 candles and sang happy birthday in their living room, while his grandmother stood in the doorway holding a dish towel like she'd been slapped. They counted on me disappearing. I brought frosting instead. She looked at me. "That trophy is coming out of that closet." She pulled the Rolodex open and found Miguel's card. Speakerphone. "Miguel, I need the AV booth at the Boise Depot Saturday evening. Full audio and projection capability. I'm calling in the Micron favor." Miguel's voice was deep and relaxed. "For you, Paula, anything. What's the occasion? My daughter-in-law's wedding. We're going to make it unforgettable." She hung up and flipped to the next card. "Now, the dress. What size are you?" We spent the next hour mapping the evening. Paula sketched the reception layout on a legal pad, marking sightline speaker positions, the bridal suite entrance, and the route I would take between dress changes. She called the thrift store on Overland and confirmed they had 3 ivory formal gowns in my size range. She scheduled a pickup for Wednesday. One more thing, she said, capping her pen. Your father's speech. What about it? You said he's going to spend the whole thing talking about Sloane. 90% probably. He'll throw me a sentence at the end. And Whitney, who was always easy. Something like that. Paula set down her pen. Let him. Let him do exactly that in front of 200 people, including Jake's entire family. The speech will speak for itself. Friday evening. The rehearsal dinner at Barbacoa, downtown Boise. Both families together for the first time. The warm lighting of the restaurant caught the exposed brick walls and reflected off wine glasses in constellations across the ceiling. The smell of wood-fired meats and roasted garlic, and the sharp tang of chimichurri filled the private dining room. My father wore a tie navy with thin stripes, the one my mother selected. Sloane wore something backless and expensive. Jake wore the blue button-down. I bought him for his birthday, the one that made his eyes look like the Boise River in September when the light hits the current just right. My mother held court. There was no head at a round table, but wherever Gail Marsh sat became the head through sheer gravitational force. She launched into a story about Whitney as a baby before the bread arrived. Whitney was such an easy baby, she told Jake's side of the family, her voice carrying the warm, confiding tone of a woman sharing something precious. Never cried, never fussed. We used to forget she was in the room. She laughed. Several people laughed with her. Paula, seated across from me, did not laugh. She picked up her water glass with the steadiness of a woman who had produced live television for 20 years and was accustomed to watching small disasters unfold while maintaining her composure. Jake's uncle Don, the retired carpenter who built us the kitchen clock as an engagement gift, leaned over to Jake and murmured, "Forget she was in the room. That's a hell of a thing to say about your kid." Jake's jaw tightened, barely visible, unless you were watching for it. I was watching for it. My father gave a brief toast. To Whitney and Jake. And to family. He looked at Sloane when he said family. His eyes stayed on her for 8 seconds. They landed on me for 2. I counted. After dinner, Sloane cornered me near the restroom hallway. Her perfume was something new, heavy and floral, something our mother picked out from a Nordstrom sampler. She gripped my arm in a way that was supposed to read as affectionate. "I just want tomorrow to be perfect for you, Whit." I held her gaze. "I know exactly what you want, Sloane." She blinked. Her lashes were extensions individually placed, the work of a salon appointment my mother paid for. Her smile wavered for half a second, a hairline crack in a performance she had been rehearsing for a week. Then the smile reset, and she squeezed my arm and walked back to the table. I stood in the hallway and pressed 3 fingers to my wrist. Pulse 82. Under control. Everything was in place. Miguel confirmed the AV access at 3 o'clock that afternoon. The decoy dress hung in the bridal suite closet at the Boise Depot, where Paula had delivered it that morning in a garment bag identical to the one holding my real dress. The voice memo was backed up on my phone, my laptop, and a USB drive in Paula's purse. I had the screenshots from the group text. Sloane accidentally included me in before removing me 4 minutes later. Don't forget the speech cards. I printed backup copies. Triumph should have landed. The plan was seamless, every piece in its place, every contingency mapped on Paula's legal pad. Instead, watching my father laugh at something my mother said, his face turned toward hers like a plant toward the window, a hollow space opened behind my ribs. The plan was working. The wedding would happen, and afterward I might not have parents anymore. The cost of dignity, the family I spent 30 years trying to earn. I excused myself to the restroom. 3 breaths each measured against the tile. I splashed water on my face. My grandmother's gold chain caught the bathroom light, the thin band of 14 karat that she wore every day of her life, and left to me in a sealed envelope with a note that said, "For the one who stays." That night, driving home from the rehearsal dinner, my phone rang. My mother. "Sweetie, I need you to change the seating chart. Put Aunt Deb at table 3 instead of table 7. The seating chart is printed, Mom. Well, unprint it. Aunt Deb needs to be near the dance floor, for Sloane's. For the toasts. I let the pause sit. 3 seconds of highway hum and the distant bark of a dog somewhere in the Boise suburbs. Near the dance floor for the toasts. Don't use that tone with me, Whitney. I have been bending over backwards for this wedding. I'll see what I can do, Mom. After the call, I checked my texts. The group text I had been removed from showed Sloane to my mother sent 2 hours earlier. Don't forget the speech cards. I printed backup copies. My sister had removed me from the group 4 minutes after sending, which was long enough for me to screenshot it. The timestamp read 8:47 p.m. By 8:51, I was gone from the group, but the screenshot was saved in a folder on my phone labeled Wedding Planning. I drove the remaining 12 minutes home at exactly the speed limit, counting the lampposts as they passed. Saturday morning, wedding day. 6 hours before the ceremony, my mother arrived at our apartment uninvited. She brought Sloane a garment bag, 2 bottles of champagne, and a makeup case the size of a small suitcase. The doorbell rang at 7:14 a.m., which I tracked because my shift-trained body logged the time of every intrusion. Surprise, we thought we'd get ready together. My mother swept into the living room with the confidence of a woman who has never been denied entry to anywhere in her life. Sloane trailed behind, carrying the garment bag like a stage prop, her face arranged in the expression she reserved for situations where she was supposed to appear delighted. Jake was already at the venue with his best man. The apartment was supposed to be mine for the morning, a few hours of quiet to sit with the weight of what was about to happen. Instead, my mother arranged champagne flutes on the kitchen counter and opened the first bottle with a practiced pop. Sloane spread makeup brushes across the bathroom, vanity claiming the mirror and the light. They took over the apartment the way they had always taken over any room I occupied, completely cheerfully, as if the space had been waiting for them to arrive and give it purpose. My mother positioned herself between me and the closet where my wedding dress hung, checking her phone, texting with one hand while applying primer with the other. She needed to control the morning to ensure the right dress was the one I wore to keep me from spending time with Paula. "I've been practicing my toast all week," Sloane said, dusting bronzer across my cheekbones with a brush that smelled like her perfume. "It's going to make you cry." "I bet it will," I said. My mother beamed. Sloane has always been such a good speaker. Remember her valedictorian speech? She was salutatorian, Mom. Well, she should have been valedictorian. I excused myself to the bathroom and texted Paula, "They're here." Phase 2, moving early. Paula replied in 11 seconds, already at the venue. Miguel has the laptop. Decoy dress in the bridal suite closet. Breathe. I counted 3 breaths against the cold tile, then walked back to the living room and let my mother finish my makeup. An hour later, Gail and Sloane left to pick up the bouquets, which were already at the venue, which meant they were leaving to do whatever they did together, when I was not present, the private orbit that had excluded me since childhood. The apartment went quiet, but my father was still there. Dennis Marsh stood in the hallway, hands in his pockets, the posture of a man who had something to say and wished the floor would swallow him before he had to say it. He was wearing his dress shirt pressed and buttoned the shirt he would wear to walk me down the aisle in 4 hours. The morning light from the bedroom window hit the collar and showed a small stain he had tried to scrub out. Coffee, probably. He had been up early, which meant he had been thinking, which was unusual for a man who had spent 35 years outsourcing his thinking to my mother. "Whitney, your mother means well." The refrigerator compressor kicked on. The hum filled the space between us. Does she? She just wants everyone to have a good time. I looked at my father. 60 years old, semi-retired insurance adjuster. A man who had spent his entire adult life as Gail Marsh's chorus, never the lead, never the dissenter, never the one who said enough. He had a kind face, and he had always had a kind face, and kindness, without action, was decoration, hanging on a wall that nobody lived behind. Dad, I heard the plan. He went still. His hands stopped moving in his pockets. I heard Sloane rehearsing the toast. I saw the text about the wine. I know about the speech you're giving that's really about Sloane. His face crumbled. There was no other word for it. The kindness collapsed, and underneath it was something older and more afraid. Something that had been hiding behind decades of, let's not make this a thing, and your mother means well and both my girls. His mouth opened and nothing came out for 3 seconds. It wasn't supposed to be. It was just going to be funny. Funny for who, Dad? He put one hand on the wall, steadying himself against a question that had 4 words and 30 years of freight behind it. For the guests. Your mother said the video would be a highlight reel that people would share it, and everyone would laugh at the bride, at your daughter, your mother thought. What did you think, Dad, not Mom? You. What did Dennis Marsh think when his wife handed him speech cards about Sloane for his other daughter's wedding? His hand dropped from the wall. His fingers curled at his side, empty, holding nothing, the posture of a man who had been carrying someone else's script for so long he could not locate his own handwriting. He could not answer. Nobody had ever asked him this question. Not me, not Sloane, not my mother. Because asking Dennis Marsh for his own opinion was like asking a mirror for its reflection. Mirrors do not have opinions. They only show you what is already there. My legs went heavy. My hands tingled with the same sensation I get after a 12-hour shift when the adrenaline drains and the body sends its invoice. I sat down on the hallway bench, Jake built from reclaimed oak sanded over 3 weekends until the wood was smooth enough to press your palm against and feel nothing but warmth. This was not the plan falling apart. The plan was fine. Miguel had the laptop, Paula had the decoy dress, and the voice memo was backed up in 3 locations. The loss was deeper and older than any plan. I had just asked my father to choose me, and he stood in my hallway in his dress shirt for my wedding, and he could not say the words. He could not say, I told your mother to stop. He could not say, you deserved better. He could not say anything at all. Because saying something would mean admitting that 30 years of silence had been a choice, and the choice had been Gail, and the cost had been me. He left without saying anything else. The door closed with a soft click. The compressor hummed. The bench held my weight. 3 breaths. Then I picked up my phone and texted Paula. Still on. She replied, never doubted it. Everyone was at the venue. The apartment was silent, except for the refrigerator and the kitchen clock. Jake's uncle gave us its second hand, sweeping in patient circles. The wedding dress hung on the closet door, ivory lace, the beadwork catching the afternoon sun that came through the blinds and stripes across the carpet. I sat on the edge of the bed. The sheets were unmade from the morning, and Jake's pillow smelled like the tea tree shampoo he bought in bulk from Costco. The apartment held his presence even when he was not in it. The hallway bench, the bookshelf he mounted last month, the electrical outlet he replaced in the bathroom because the old one made him nervous. Jake left evidence of care everywhere he went. I opened the nightstand drawer. His vow draft handwritten on a sheet of lined paper from a legal pad. Electrician's handwriting precise, blocky, the handwriting of a man who labeled circuit breakers for a living where clarity was its own form of love. You spent 30 years being chosen second. I choose you first. Every morning, no contest. I read it 3 times. Then I set it down and sat in the quiet and let the memories come not because I summoned them, but because they had been waiting. The science fair trophy, age 12, my project on soil pH and bean plant growth. 6 weeks of measurements every morning before school data, recorded in a composition notebook of the green cover, first place at the regional competition. My parents were at Sloane's dance recital. I came home and my mother said, "That's nice, honey." The trophy went in my closet. Sloane's recitals. My mother in the audience, her face bright, and focused the face of a woman watching the extension of herself move across a stage. I sat in the back row, holding my mother's purse, counting pirouettes, learning what it looked like when someone was proud of their child, learning that it was not a face my mother wore for me. My college graduation. I was walking across the stage when I looked out at the audience and saw my mother's face tilted down, lit by the screen of her phone. I never asked what she was looking at. Some questions are more merciful as blanks. The engagement dinner. My parents, Sloane, Jake, and me around a table at a steakhouse. My mother examined Jake's hands across the white tablecloth and said, "Well, he's not a doctor, but he seems nice." Jake squeezed my knee under the table and said nothing, which was the right thing and the kind thing, and which was exactly what my father would have done, except that Jake's silence was chosen from strength and my father's silence was chosen from surrender, and that difference was everything. 30 years of being chosen second. And here I was 6 hours from the altar, still arranging a seating chart around my mother's preferences, still performing the role of grateful daughter for a woman who was at this moment probably in a car somewhere in Boise rehearsing. Sloane threw the sweet version of a toast designed to Sekine. Humiliate me in front of everyone I loved. The want was dead. It died in the hallway with my father's silence, with his mouth opening and closing and nothing coming out. Nothing that could fill 30 years of empty chairs at events where I was the honoree and he was the man reading the wrong script. What remained was harder and simpler and closer to the bone. Jake, the baby growing inside me at 8 weeks, a life the size of a raspberry, who already had a heartbeat and did not yet have a name, but already had a father who would show up. Paula, who drove 40 minutes on a Tuesday to deliver crackers and paint swatches, because that was how she loved, with action, with casseroles, with the quiet ferocity of a woman who had been erased once and swore it would not happen again. My nursing colleagues who covered my shifts when I had the flu. Ray, who drove 2 hours to help me pick the venue. Jake's union brothers who welded the reception arch from scrap copper pipe as a wedding gift and refused payment because that's what brothers do. These were my people. The plan was no longer about humiliating my mother. The plan was about letting my mother be exactly who she was in front of the community who needed to see it, and then building something that did not require her approval to stand. I picked up my grandmother's gold chain from the dresser. My grandmother, who drove 40 minutes to the science fair and sat in the front row and said afterward with her hand on my face, "You're not the easy one, Whitney. You're the strong one. There's a difference." I put on the chain. 3 breaths, each one slower than the last. I picked up both dresses and drove to the venue. 200 guests. The Boise foothills in October, the aspen trees burning gold and orange against a sky so blue it pressed against the eyes. The outdoor ceremony area at the Boise Depot, white chairs, arranged in rows, the copper pipe arch wrapped in eucalyptus and trailing white ribbon. The air carried sage and cold earth, and the faintest trace of wood smoke drifting down from the North End hills. I walked down the aisle on my father's arm. He held my elbow the way he held everything, gently, without commitment, ready to let go if someone told him to. I did not look at him. I looked at Jake. Jake stood at the arch in his navy suit, the one we picked together at a shop on 8th Street, and his eyes were wet and his jaw was set, and he was the most solid thing in my field of vision. A man who wired houses for a living, who spent his days making sure electricity went where it was supposed to go, who learned early that power was only useful when it was directed and dangerous when it was not. The officiant spoke. I heard roughly a third of it, the rest, dissolving into white noise behind the sound of my own pulse. Steady now, 68 beats per minute, the resting rate of a woman whose mind was made. Jake's vow. 3 sentences in that blocky electrician's handwriting come to life. You spent 30 years being chosen second. I choose you first. Every morning, no contest. The sound that came from the guests was not applause. It was breath released all at once, the sound 200 people make when something true cuts through the ceremony and lands in the chest. My mother, front row, left side, adjusted her corsage. Paula, front row, right side, pressed a tissue to her eyes and clapped twice hard like a woman punctuating a sentence. My vow was shorter. I spent a long time looking for where I belong. Turns out belonging isn't somewhere you find. It's someone who finds you. We exchanged rings. Sloane, maid of honor, as my mother insisted, held the ring pillow. Her hands were trembling. Her lips moved silently, rehearsing the toast in her head, running through the lines she had practiced into her phone in the laundry room 1 week ago, when she snorted and laughed, and did not check to see if anyone was listening. The reception hall at the Boise Depot was transformed. Fairy lights strung from the vaulted ceiling cast warm constellations across the white linen tablecloths, centerpieces of dahlias and eucalyptus. The DJ, coordinated by Paula, cued the entrance song. Jake and I walked through the double doors and into the room, 200 people on their feet, applause washing over us in waves. I was wearing the decoy dress. Similar silhouette, slightly different neckline. $41 from the thrift store on Overland Road. The difference passed without a single glance. My mother was positioned near the entrance, glass of red wine in hand. She had chosen Cabernet. I noted this the way I noted vitals, clinically, without emotion, filing the data. Cabernet would stain deeper than Merlot, wider spread on contact, harder to remove from fabric. She had researched which wine would cause the most damage to ivory. The preparation was almost admirable. She stepped forward. Congratulations, baby. The hug was choreographed. Her right arm came up and the wine glass tilted. Red wine cascaded down the front of the decoy dress, a bloom of crimson spreading across the bodice and dripping onto the polished hardwood floor. Gasps from the nearest tables. My mother's face assembled itself into manufactured shock, mouth open, eyes wide, free hand flying to cover it. The performance was flawless. Oh my God, Whitney, I am so sorry. It slipped. Someone get a towel. I looked down at the spreading stain, counted to 3. It's okay, Mom. I'll go change. I walked to the bridal suite. Changed into the real dress, the one Paula delivered Thursday morning in an identical garment bag. Checked my reflection in the full-length mirror. Grandmother's chain against my collarbone. Clean ivory lace, steady hands. I walked back into the reception hall. The fairy lights caught the beadwork on the bodice, sending tiny points of light across the nearest tables, and the room went quiet in sections the way a ward goes quiet when an attending walks in. Table 9 saw me first, then table 6, then the head table where Jake's Uncle Don set down his fork and leaned forward with the slow, deliberate attention of a man inspecting a joint he did not cut. The dress was pristine, unblemished, clearly a different garment from the one that had been soaked in Cabernet 4 minutes ago. The lace was different. The neckline was different. The beadwork, which my mother had examined during fittings and approved twice, was entirely wrong for the dress she had selected as her target. The murmurs started at the nearest tables and rippled outward in concentric circles, the sound of 200 people recalculating a story that had just shifted beneath them. Jake's cousin at table 9 lowered her phone, the one she had been using to record the wine spill, and pointed it at me again, adjusting the angle to capture the clean dress in the fairy light. My mother's face went rigid. Her jaw tightened and her eyes narrowed, and she turned to Sloane with the instinct of a general losing a position. Sloane looked at Gail. Gail mouthed something I could read from across the room. How Paula, standing near the bar in a navy dress with pearl earrings, caught my eye. A small nod. The nod of a producer who watched the first act land exactly as blocked. The toasts began. My father took the microphone. His speech lasted 4 minutes and 12 seconds. I timed it on my wristwatch, the same watch I used to track medication intervals on the ward. 3 minutes and 48 seconds were about Sloane. Her dance competitions, she could have gone professional. Her vivacious personality, she lights up every room. Her upcoming fresh start. We're all so proud of Sloane's resilience. He mentioned Sloane by name 11 times. He mentioned me by name twice, once at the beginning, we're here for Whitney and Jake, and once at the end. And of course, Whitney, who was always easy, low maintenance. She never gave us any trouble. 24 seconds. Out of 4 minutes and 12 seconds, my father gave me 24 seconds at my own wedding. I did the math the way I did medication dosages, automatically, precisely, without flinching. 24 out of 252. Less than 10%. Less than the percentage of a shift I spent on charting, and charting was the part of nursing everyone avoided. He meant it as the highest praise in his vocabulary. The room heard it differently. Jake's Uncle Don shook his head slowly and placed his napkin on the table. Two of my nursing colleagues exchanged a glance across their table, the same glance they exchanged on the ward when a parent said something that explained everything about a child's chart. Ray, seated at table 4, pressed her lips together and gripped her husband's arm. Paula set down her glass with the careful precision of a woman restraining herself from standing up. Then Sloane took the microphone. She began the sweet version, the rehearsed, camera-ready, champagne toast version. My baby sister found her prince, and I just want to say how happy. She paused, looked at her speech cards in her left hand, looked at my mother for the encouraging nod. My mother delivered it tiny, practiced the conductor, cueing the soloist, and then the speakers changed. Miguel in the AV booth above the dance floor switched the audio feed. Sloane's voice, recorded 6 days earlier through the crack in the laundry room door, filled the reception hall through every speaker in the room. And then I grabbed the back of her dress and just yanked right during the "to the bride" part. Mom says if I time it right, everyone will laugh and it'll look like I'm being playful. And then Mom does the wine thing during the entrance. It's going to be so good. The snort. That specific snort, the one I had been hearing my entire life, amplified through a professional sound system and projected into a room full of people who now heard it for what it was. Sloane stood at the microphone, her live face frozen, her recorded voice filling the room with the truth of what she had rehearsed. Her mouth was still open from the word happy, the last syllable of the performance version, hanging in the air alongside the real version, pouring from the speakers. The gap between the two Sloanes was visible to every person in the room, the sister at the microphone in her silk dress, and the sister on the audio feed snorting, laughing, rehearsing how to ruin a wedding while the dryer ran. Her speech cards dropped from her left hand, slowly white rectangles drifting to the dark hardwood floor one by one, each card printed with lines of a performance that had just collapsed. The first card landed face up. From my angle, I could read the opening line in Sloane's looping handwriting. My baby sister found her prince. Silence. The silence pressed against the walls and the ceiling and the fairy lights and the 200 guests, and it had weight, and it had edges, and it was the loudest sound I had ever heard in a room. My mother stood up. The wine glass was still in her hand, empty now, the stem catching the light. Her face was the exact color of the Cabernet she had spilled. She turned to me. "Whitney, how could you do this to your family?" I stood. My voice was the voice I used when a parent in the NICU was panicking and needed to hear someone in control. Calm, measured, every syllable precise. "I didn't do anything, Mom. I played your plan." That's Sloane's voice. "Those are your instructions. The wine stain is on the dress you picked. I just let everyone hear what you rehearsed." My mother turned to the guests, arms wide, performing outrage for an audience that was no longer buying tickets. She's twisting things. I would never. Sloane grabbed her purse from the table. She did not look at my mother or at me or at anyone. She walked toward the exit, and her heels clicked on the hardwood floor, and the sound was louder than it should have been because nobody else was making any noise at all. My mother, cornered, stripped of the performance, dropped the mask for one sentence. Just one. Her face was not angry and not ashamed, but confused, the expression of a woman who had been caught doing something she genuinely did not consider wrong. We were just trying to make it memorable. 9 words. The room absorbed them. Make it memorable. For her. Because my wedding in my mother's mind had always been Gail Marsh's event, and the guest of honor had always been Gail Marsh, and the bride was set dressing. My father sat at table 1. His hands were flat on the tablecloth, perfectly still the way hands rest when there is nothing left to do with them. He did not defend my mother. He did not defend me. For the first time in 35 years, his silence was not a betrayal, but an admission, the quietest possible confession that he had been in the room the whole time and had chosen to be furniture. Jake's hand found mine under the table, warm, rough, steady. Paula across the room raised her champagne glass. Not a toast. A signal I'm here. I picked up the microphone. I owe you all an apology for the interruption. The rest of this evening is about celebrating, if you'll have us. The DJ restarted the music. People stood. Some left a few of my mother's friends, gathered coats and purses with the tight-lipped efficiency of women already composing their group text version of events. Most stayed. Jake's family stayed. My nursing colleagues stayed. Ray and her husband stayed. Paula's friends from KTVB stayed. The dance floor filled. Jake pulled me close and his hand was on the small of my back, and my face was against his shoulder, and I breathed in the tea tree shampoo, and the starch of his suit, and the October night coming through the open doors cold and clean, and carrying the scent of sage. My father was still at his table. He had not left, and he had not spoken. He sat with his hands folded, his tie loosened, the most honest version of himself he had managed in 35 years present and silent, but this time the silence was his own. My mother and Sloane were gone. 2 empty chairs at table, 2 untouched place cards, and the sight of them should have ached, but instead there was something lighter in that space, something that had been pressing on my chest for 30 years and was now just air, circulating, finding new places to go. The band played until midnight, and every song was one I chose. 4 months later. January. The first real snowfall of the winter. Jake and I closed on the bungalow in the north end of Boise 3 weeks after the wedding. 3 bedrooms, a yard with a fence that needed painting, and a kitchen with east-facing windows that let the morning light in strong and warm enough to heat the countertop. Jake rewired the entire house himself, spending weekends running new circuits and upgrading the panel. And when he finished, he wiped his hands on his jeans and said, "This house will never short out on us." He meant the wiring. He meant everything. I was 6 months pregnant now, showing in a way that made my scrubs fit differently, and my colleagues at Street Luke's bring me snacks I did not ask for. The baby moved in the mornings. Small shifting motions against the inside of my ribs, and I tracked them the way I tracked vitals regularly, carefully, with the attention of someone trained to notice what others missed. The nursery was the smallest bedroom, the one with the window that looked out at the neighbor's blue spruce. Jake stood on a step stool, wiring the overhead light fixture, a pendant lamp we found at a vintage shop on Main Street. The walls were seafoam green, Paula's choice. "Seafoam, not mint. There's a difference," she said, when she showed up with paint swatches in November. She painted 2 walls herself before I told her to sit down and eat the lunch I had made. Paula was at the house 3 times a week. Casseroles wrapped in foil with reheating instructions taped to the top. Baby shower planning in a 3-ring binder with color-coded tabs. Nursery organization that involved a label maker and a level she brought from home. She placed Jake's baby shoes in a Ziploc bag on the nursery shelf, as if she were installing a museum exhibit. She was the mother I spent 30 years earning from the wrong person. The Boise rumor mill had done its work quietly and thoroughly. The wedding video filmed by Jake's cousin on a phone from Table 9 traveled through text chains and group chats and eventually into the conversations at my mother's book club, her hair salon, and her church small group. Nobody posted it publicly. Nobody needed to. The speech cards on the floor, the wine-stained decoy dress held up by a laughing bridesmaid, the look on my mother's face when the audio played. These images circulated the way information circulates in a small city through whispers and screenshots, and the slow, undeniable gravity of a truth that everyone suspected but nobody had confirmed until now. 3 of my mother's friends called me after the wedding. 2 sent gifts. One, a woman named Barbara, who had been in my mother's book club for 15 years, said, "I always wondered about your mother. You were always so quiet at the Christmas parties. Now I understand why. Sloane had not spoken to me since the wedding, but 2 weeks ago she sent a text. 3 words, 'Can we talk?' The message sat in my phone the way an unanswered question sits in a patient's chart. It needed attention, but the timing was not yet right. I had not replied. My father called twice. The first call lasted 40 seconds and consisted of Dennis clearing his throat 3 times and saying, "I hope you're doing well." The second call last week was different. His voice was lower and thicker. I should have said something. A long time ago. "Yeah," I said. "You should have." He cried. The sound was quiet and unfamiliar, the sound of a man who had not practiced crying the way he had practiced silence. I listened for 12 seconds. Then I said, "I have to go, Dad. The baby has an appointment." The appointment was real. The timing was mine. At Street Luke's, a colleague named Beth approached me in the break room. She was a NICU nurse, 34, and she had heard about the wedding from a mutual friend. She stood by the coffee machine, twisting her lanyard the way people stand when they are about to say something they have been carrying for a long time. My mom is the same way. My sister gets everything. I get, "You're so independent, you don't need anything." Like needing something is a character flaw. I poured her a cup of coffee and set it on the counter in front of her. They're counting on you being polite. That's their whole strategy. Beth looked at me, and her face rearranged the way patients' parents' faces rearrange when you tell them the test results are clear relief so deep it changes the structure of the expression. Nobody has ever said that to me before. I found the science fair trophy in a box at my parents' house when Jake and I went to pick up the last of my things. My mother was not home. My father let us in and stood in the doorway of my old room while I filled 2 boxes. The trophy was in the closet behind a shoebox of Sloane's old dance medals. I pulled it out and read the brass plate, First Place Regional Science Fair, 2008. Whitney Marsh. It sat on the nursery shelf, now between Paula's baby shoes and a stuffed elephant from Ray. Not because the trophy mattered as an award, but because the 12-year-old girl who measured bean plants every morning for 6 weeks and recorded the data in a green composition notebook mattered, and she always had, and the shelf was a place where that was finally visible. Jake finished the wiring. He climbed down from the step stool and flipped the switch. The pendant lamp glowed amber, and the nursery warmed the seafoam walls, turning golden the shadow of the blue spruce outside, moving slowly across the floor. "First light," Jake said. The baby kicked. Outside snow settled on the fence and the yard and the neighbor's spruce. Inside the nursery hummed with the quiet electricity of a home that would hold. I sat in the rocking chair Paula found at an estate sale and refinished herself sanding the armrests until they were smooth. The gold chain was warm against my collarbone. The pendant lamp was on, casting that amber glow across the seafoam walls. Jake was in the kitchen singing off-key to something on the radio, and the sound carried through the small house the way sound carries in a place where every room is occupied by someone who chose to be there. Part of me still checked my phone on Sunday mornings, waiting for my mother to text about brunch. She did not text anymore. The blank screen on Sunday at 9 a.m. was its own kind of message, and I was still learning to read it without flinching, still measuring whether the absence was heavier than the attendance. 30 years of data, that was what I had. 30 years of observations recorded in the composition notebook of my memory, each entry precise as a vital sign. The science fair, the back row at the dance recitals. My mother's purse in my lap. The phone screen glowing during my graduation. The champagne blush nails tapping the glass. Anything for my girl, spoken to the girl who performed while the girl who stayed sat quietly and counted and held the bag. The pattern was not, "I'm the easy one." I carried that label for years, wore it like a name badge clipped to my scrubs. Easy Whitney. Low maintenance Whitney. the one who never cried, never fussed, never asked. But the pattern seen from this rocking chair at 30 years old and 6 months pregnant with a gold chain warming against my chest was different. The pattern was, I'm the one who stays. I stayed through the recitals and the graduations where nobody clapped, and every Sunday brunch where Sloane's life was the main course, and mine was a side dish that appeared without being ordered. I stayed because staying was what I was built for, the same way I stayed through 12-hour shifts and code blues and parents who screamed and monitors that alarmed. Staying was my operating system. The difference now was who I stayed for. I did not hate my mother. The clarity arrived slowly, the way a bruise changes color over weeks green to yellow to something that no longer hurts when you press it. I pitied her. She spent 30 years building a family around Sloane, and now Sloane was 33 and living in a guest house with no career, no savings, and a text message she circled for 4 months before sending 3 words. My mother's greatest project was a woman who could not function without her, and that was not love. That was a monument to herself, and monuments do not move, and they do not grow, and they do not kick at 6 months in a seafoam green nursery with a pendant lamp humming overhead. Sloane's text sat in my phone. Can we talk? 3 words. I did not have an answer yet, and I was learning that not answering was also a decision, and that decisions could wait, and that waiting was not the easy choice, but the careful one. My patients' families waited for test results all the time. The waiting was precision, not weakness. There were things I still carried. The sound of my father crying on the phone, 12 seconds of grief I did not cause and could not fix. The image of my mother's face when the audio played confusion rather than shame, the expression of a woman unable to locate the error in her own code. The speech cards on the hardwood floor, white rectangles drifting down like a slow-motion snowfall of intentions that never belonged at my wedding. And there were things I no longer carried. The seating chart, the approved song list. The need to earn a smile distributed on a schedule I was never given. The weight of being chosen second in a contest I did not enter and could not win because the rules were written before I was born. The gold chain was warm. My grandmother's chain left to me in an envelope with a note that said, "For the one who stays." She saw me before anyone else did, and what she saw was not the easy one and not the strong one, but the girl who measured bean plants at sunrise and wrote everything down, and won a trophy and put it in a closet and did not complain, and that the girl was still here, sitting in a rocking chair in a nursery. She built in a house her husband wired, carrying a baby who would never sit in a back row, holding someone else's purse. Jake sang off-key in the kitchen. Something about a river, something about going home. The baby kicked, and I pressed my hand to the place where the kick landed and held it there, feeling the rhythm of a heartbeat that was not mine and was not yet named and was already loved. The rocking chair moved. The snow fell outside. The pendant lamp hummed its soft electrical hum, the sound of a circuit. Jake wired himself a circuit that would hold, and I did not need to be chosen anymore because I had already built the